Okay, 7 o'clock. We'll go ahead and get this meeting started. I'll call the meeting to order. This is the Board of Finance regular meeting on Wednesday, July 27th, 2022. So welcome, everybody. It's good to be back. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Okay. Thank you. We'll roll on to agenda item number 2, which is public speak. Eric, do you want to go around and see if we have any public that would like to speak?
I do not believe we have any members of the public here. I think phone number 5579 is Marina. And Nick Levine is recording this for CBC. So there is no public present.
Okay, very good. Let's go ahead and continue. Item 3 is additions or deletions of agenda items. Does anybody want to have any suggested additions or deletions to the agenda items?
I do.
Joanne?
Yeah, since it's July, are we going to be voting on like chairperson, vice chairperson on a regular yearly? I just wanted to, can we add that to the agenda? I don't know if that's something we do, but.
It's not something we have done, but I'm certainly open to that. I don't think it's a bad idea if we want to go ahead and do that. So do you want to make a motion to amend the agenda item? I would suggest it probably go under 10 G, which would be new business. 10G.
Sure. I'll make the motion to do our yearly vote on chairperson and vice chairperson.
But yeah, so it'd be for the board to consider that as part of our procedures, because we really don't have, I think, any kind of set procedure for that.
Okay.
Second it for discussion.
Okay, Kurt seconds it. Any discussion?
I honestly don't remember how we've handled this in the past.
I think by charter, all boards and commissions are supposed to do it every year or every other year, but I would have to review the charter to give you an exact.
The fire commission does it yearly, every July. We do our chairman and treasurer.
I think the Board of Ed does it every year too. I think I've been at their meetings where they've done it every year. It's a good practice to have, so I'm not opposed to it.
Well, this, again, the motion is to add it to the agenda.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Well, that's just.
Seems like an appropriate thing to add to the agenda. Does anybody disagree? No? Okay, I guess I'll call for a vote if there's no more discussion. All those in favor of adding the agenda item 10G, discussion of process for voting on chair and vice chair for the Board of Finance. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, hearing none. Okay, we'll go ahead and add that to the agenda item. Thank you, Joanne.
Sure.
Any other additions or deletions? Diane?
I want to make a motion for a deletion to delete the finance department report. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to look at it, but the report is really inaccurate, and I don't think it's even worth us having it on the agenda until we get it all corrected and everything and do it at the next meeting.
So you're talking about agenda item 6 in its entirety?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody want to second that?
Isn't Marina leaving also?
Yes.
When did she leave, Eric? You know?
August 5th.
Okay, so maybe that would help if we could.
Does anybody want to second the motion to delete agenda item 6, Finance Department report from the?
I'll second it.
Okay, Kurt seconds. Any discussion? I personally haven't had time to review it. I did skim over it, but not to any significant degree.
If we do agree and vote on deleting the report, are we still able to get some finance department news, you know, about the transition or
I think that's,
I know Kurt brought that up, and that is a good point. If this is the last time we're gonna have her here at a meeting.
I guess I was just, mine on this was not to spend time discussing the reports. I mean, we want to discuss something else. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I just think the reports need to
Yeah.
be fixed up a little bit.
I'm all for starting the meeting myself. If we can do it that way.
I can understand if the report isn't accurate, not discussing it in detail until it's correct. But that's good that we can still talk about the finance department in general.
well, maybe, I think we always have board open discussion, and I think we have the discussion of the new treasurer on there, right? You know, so that kind of can fit in.
Yeah.
That's my gut. Yeah, I mean, I trust that Diane's been through this, and I too haven't gone through it in detail. So if you're telling me that we're looking at reports that really aren't accurate, then what is the point?
My personal feeling, I'll be honest, is that we should probably leave the agenda item on there for the finance department, even if we don't discuss this particular report. But I think just getting a status update early in this meeting is probably appropriate, just because it doesn't really fit under the treasurer. That's specifically about the treasurer position. You know, we could do board open discussion too. I'm okay with that, or it could just be part of Eric's review.
Right.
But we could just call that part of the town administrator's report. I guess we could cover that stuff. So I guess we could do it that way.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I put in a ticket with Edmonds today, so the report is not showing the transfers that I did that you guys approved at the last board meeting. So that's why it's showing that it's off. It's almost like it's missing a column for transfers, even though when I run the report, I put one of the columns to put transfers in. It's not pulling it correctly. So I put in a ticket with Edmonds today. So I'm hoping tomorrow, it's kind of late in the day. I did it today. Hopefully tomorrow they can connect with me and kind of, I don't know if maybe I did something wrong with the transfers, or if there's a way to rerun it showing those transfers in that report.
Yeah, we both screwed around with it for a couple hours today, trying to figure out how to produce a report that accurately showed, because the transfers are in and have been made. But no matter whether we put adopted budget, original budget, or modified budget, it comes up with the same number. And it's definitely pretty screwy. And we're not capable of solving it, I think, without Edmonds. There's something in the process that's wrong.
To get back to our motion, I guess I'll revise my comments and say I'm okay removing that finance department report, since it clearly now we have, validation from Marina and Eric both that this is not accurate, and we could just talk about the summary from the budget from the finance department under the town administrator section. Would that work for everybody? Anybody object to that?
Sure.
Works.
It's fine.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, we'll make a vote on Diane's motion to remove agenda item 6, finance department report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on. Thank you, Diane. Any further additions or deletions of the agenda items? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on to item number 4, which is the town administrator's report. Eric?
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen here, presuming I can grab the right one. Okay, so hopefully you're looking at my administrator's report. I'm not gonna go through everything. I'm just gonna kind of hit on the highlights. As a number of you have talked about, as far as town hall operations, Marina has submitted a resignation effective August 5th. However, she's also indicated that she's willing to stay on part-time and would either even consider other options. So that would be something that, you know, as a board, both you and the Board of Selectmen, I'm sure will discuss. And whether you want to talk about it here or you whether want to talk about later is kind of up to you. We did get our notification from Eversource that we were awarded the grant for the chargers. So that's really good news from my perspective. However, as a board, you remember that that was one of the things you had somewhat of an issue with in terms of purchasing policy. So both CIP and Board of Selectmen have agreed that that's a reasonable thing. You know, there's a solid reason for waiving our purchasing policy for that. But you know, you as a board are going to have to agree whether we do that or not. If you do agree, we can order the parts and we can have it installed this month. If not, we're going to be kind of back to the drawing board a little bit. We were also looking at the potential for a second charger installation at the library. When I talked to them a little over a week ago, back up, the library board came back finally and said, yeah, the Board of Selectmen asked me to ask the library board whether that was something they wanted to consider. They came back to me about 10 days ago and said, yes. I reached out to the program administrator for the charger program and asked them flat out whether they had money left in that program. And his answer to me was, as of today, we do. We're sold out on the rapid charger, on the DC fast charger, and we're sold out on the home charger portion of the program. But the level 2, you know, charger that's available for municipalities, we are still taking applications and still funding. And then about last week, they called and asked specifically about our first grant award and wanted to know whether we were going to actually go through with it. And I quizzed them and said, does that mean, you know, you're trying to find out whether anybody's going to back out of previous arrangements because you've run out of money? And he basically said, he wasn't telling me that officially, but he was saying unofficially that we would not, if we submitted today, we would not get the charger grant for the library. There is another grant program opening up September 15th that we can potentially fund that through. So that's kind of where we're going to be pushing that one. If we do that, we'll be doing it through the Volkswagen settlement money. That's a different grant funding source through the state. So good news, bad news on that one. Second thing, we did get the bill for the resident state trooper. We actually got it earlier this year than we have in the past. And the bill for the resident state trooper came in, I think Marina's got the exact number, but it was like $129,000, and we budgeted more like 175. So it came in a lot less than last year, which was a lot less than the year before. So, you know, we have to figure out why. I mean, it's a good thing because that's $50,000 we don't have to spend. But it's kind of annoying in that we can't get a firm estimate from the state on what our costs for that program are going to be, because they don't set their indirect rates until, so you can know roughly what your trooper makes in terms of salary, but what you don't know is what indirect rate they're going to multiply his salary by and what other things they're going to, you know, account for under the contract. So again, good news that it's cheaper, bad news that, you know, we're so bloody far off in our estimate. So that's that. We have finalized the contract with one of our 2 unions, with MEIU. That contract was signed basically a little over a year late. We have another contract that expired this July 1, but the union has not actually even met with their members yet and decided with a bargaining position. So until they do that and indicate that they're ready to talk about it, that's pretty much just sitting there. We do have a lot of projects going, and I'll talk about some of them a little bit later. Right now, as you know, we're in the middle of working on a steep grant application for the senior transportation, vehicle storage. I'm also actively working, been involved with both CROG and the state trying to get another grant program called TRIP, which is a grant for rural communities essentially to do roadwork projects. So that one has a potential of having a really high payoff for us. But we've got to get the state to agree to modify the program a little bit. So we've submitted comments to help do that. We also have stuff ongoing with the connectivity grant, the charger grant we talked about. And I think, did I mention at the last meeting that the federal local bridge program has been modified? So that's a huge deal to the town of Andover. The implication of that is that the state has agreed to pick up the town's portion of the cost for both the Bunker Hill Bridge and the Long Hill Road Bridge. So between the two of those, which are both in the federal local bridge program. So between those two, that's somewhere between $1 million and $1.2 million in total cost savings to the town to do those two bridges. So that's really huge. That was a little bit of good luck and a little bit of planning on our part. So that's that. You guys had a lot of questions for me earlier in the year about transfer station stickers and why we were, why we had not collected all the revenue, into like May of this year. And just to put it in perspective, prior to July 1 of this year, we sold 550 transfer station stickers. So those went on the books for the year that just closed. And then since July 1, between July 1 and July 22, we're now up to about 1,000 stickers issued. So that's one of those things. The reason why we get so much money in very late in the year is because people who weren't procrastinators get it in the previous fiscal year. So related to the finance office, we sent all of you a copy of the draft audit, recommendations. And then I sent to the commission today the letter from the auditor, basically the explanation letter. And we have audit on the agenda, so I don't necessarily want to touch it here, but I'm just saying you've got those documents.
I do have some questions, but if we're going to discuss it later, I can hold them till then.
Sure. Yeah, that's the next item on the agenda is audit status. So I would say we handle that there. The only thing I would like to say is that, from reading the audit findings, one of the things that I would like to do, which I've already talked to our IT, is to establish a separate grants shared folder. Right now I store the grant information I have in a shared folder that's really only accessible to myself and my admin. And then the town clerk is storing some of the stuff for grants separately. And then the finance department has information related to grants. And we really need to get all of that in one central location that's accessible to all of us. So I pushed that as one of the things I want IT to work on in the next, week or two, is establish, a common shared file that we can put all that in. And then, as Diane mentioned, the other thing we do is we need some kind of master tracking list for all the grants we have going. What the start date is, what the expected dates are, conditions, amount of money, And whether it's a grant where we get the money up front or whether it's a grant that we get reimbursed for after we expend the money. You know, because that's, you know, we don't have a grant administrator, so so maintenance of that is shared between a number of us, and we need to kind of tighten up the way we're dealing with that. The second thing is, I already spoke to Wally from the fire commissioners. We're gonna need a memorandum of understanding with the fire department for a yearly inventory. Because one of the things we got dinged on pretty significantly on the audit this year was the fact that we, up to this point, have never been including the inventory of fire equipment on our audit, on our inventory list at the top. And, you know, that's you know, of course, the auditor's been doing this, you know, now for 5 years for the town, and he's just now deciding, you know, that we should be doing that, but, you know, now that we're aware of it, you know, we need to make that happen.
Eric, if I may. Back when we purchased when the town purchased the supplemental insurance policy, we had to itemize every vehicle and everything on every vehicle, and what we had for, you know, on the shelf, in the gear locker, things like that, for the insurance, for coverage. And it's astronomical amount of equipment that the town has in our little department. So that list should not be hard to get. Can you get it for, I guess it's Smith Brothers Insurance handled our supplemental policy. They have that list. They have the inventory list of everything over there, including the facility. In their ideas, if the whole place was just to disintegrate and leave with all the trucks and everything on the shelf. So that's readily available to cut back on a lot of the work there. So because we got that when I was just finishing my tenure as chief, that was one of the items that I pushed for and we got. So that went to bid. So I'd go to the Smith Brothers in Glastonbury, and they should have the list.
Right, but I mean, it needs to be updated every year, and we need to do the same thing we do with Public Works, which is go down there and at least for the major stuff count, make sure we got everything that we have on our list, and, you know, do a physical inventory.
I will say it'll probably be an issue to get Wally or probably any one of us commissioners to go through what we have bought and haven't bought. Ronnie may want to take it on, but I think you're gonna have, you know, some issues with that. I'm just not sure. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I've discussed it with Wally. I mean, I think the important thing is that, you know, one of the things the auditor said to me is he thinks we should be accounting for everything that's more expensive than about $1,500 for a set. And I think that's low because, I mean, this is really capital assets. You know, and ultimately it's the Board of Finance's decision. It's not my decision what that threshold is. I mean, I think we should be looking at a higher threshold, you know, than that, or accounting for classes of equipment. Because like every set of turnout gear combined, one set is more than $1,500.
Oh,
You know,
gosh, 1,500, that's just for the coat. I'm telling you right now, there's millions of dollars of inventory and apparatus and facilities next door. Millions. You know, just look at the apparatus in cost today. That's what I have to go by is cost today. Look at the inventory of hose and nozzles and you name it. Everything that we use over there to do what we do, it costs a lot of money. So I agree with you. You know, we gotta really perk it up a little bit because if we would ever lose everything, that can happen. It just happened somewhere down south. I think they lost everything in the building. That'd be pretty expensive on the town. That's kind of my point.
Understood. So as far as the building department, as most of you know by now, we have been live with online payments for all the land use agencies. That seems to be going smoothly, although I was a little irritated that for my zoning board of appeals, I actually had to use the town credit card to pay the town to apply for the permit. But that's neither here nor there. At least it got the money going in the right spot. The only thing we're continuing to keep out of Permit Link is the bond payments for driveways. Just because I think it's easier to track those separately. As far as the town engineer, I think that one of the things we should do, I've asked the Board of Finance to consider some changes to the purchasing policy. And one of the areas I think we're going to want to discuss is professional services. Now, we did an RFP solicitation for a town engineer. And we know who we're going to hire. We don't have a contract yet. But one of the things that contract is going to have to specify is at what level a project still has to go to RFP and what can I just go to the town engineer to get done. If I'm doing a design for a road or I'm doing a design for a bridge or something, what is the dollar threshold at which that I have to do an actual solicitation for the engineering work? So I think that's something that we as a board really need to come up with, that number, because that's going to impact what stuff we do automatically with them and what stuff we just prepare preliminary documents with them and then immediately go to RFP. I kind of think that's a whole, we should really sit down and spend an entire meeting discussing the purchasing policy and where we go as a policy and what the limits should be, if that makes sense. I'm just bringing up because this was one of the things, that we've identified as being an issue. The other thing is, and I don't know what the solution for it is at this point, but we have kind of a debris management problem in Andover. And that is, if you look at the rules for getting reimbursed, from FEMA, they're pretty crazy. And so far, myself and the Public Works Director haven't really spent the time to figure out how we can comply with all the regulations to get reimbursed with that. We've had a couple moderately sized storms in the last 3 years, but we've never made a FEMA claim for it. And the reason is you basically need somebody during the storm, a full-time employee documenting as you go, because the level of detail you're required to provide is huge. And it takes a lot of resources. So I think that's one of those things that we're trying to think through right now. Because if we ever did get a really bad storm, we'd have to be able to claim for FEMA. And we clearly can't do it now. We don't have the procedures in place. But it may require us hiring a firm, just to be on call to do that in case of, emergencies also. So I'm just letting you know that that's probably also going to be a future subject of discussion with the Board of Finance. We are done with the road shimming. The next thing up is Gorman. Contractors will be in to chip seal, hopefully at the end of middle to end of August. So that's coming up pretty quickly. We haven't scheduled tree work yet. The next big thing we're going to be doing is Gilead Road. Distinctive Tree Care has agreed to honor the pricing schedule that we established the last time we went out to RFP for tree work, which is now 2 years ago. So that's really good thing, because they agreed not to put a price increase in this year. And the second thing is Eversource has agreed to partner with us and, share part of the project cost for doing the work. We still haven't worked out exactly how much they're willing to contribute to it, but we're hoping that, sometime in August, we get rolling on that. So that's on the schedule. Probably looking at it objectively, by the time we did all of Gilead Road and maybe a little bit of a cone, we will have spent our entire town allotment, plus whatever Eversource is willing to contribute. Because there's just a ton of dead trees on that section. So that's going to need a lot. We are still keeping some money back to do, singles, problem trees that we identify. We typically do singles, by collecting a whole bunch. And once we have a whole group of them that we know we need to do, we do it with tenant tree service. They seem to have about the best, for small, groups, and we hire them by the day. So that's kind of how we're addressing that. We talked about the federal local bridge program, the news that the Investment and Jobs Act is now, willing to pay for the town's portion. So the town's no longer paying 20% of the cost of replacing both those bridges. And we did get the Long Hill Bridge in the program, and we beat the big rush. So that was really good. So we stand a chance of keeping that on track. Because now, as soon as the other towns realized that it was essentially free, everybody that's got a failing bridge is putting all their failing bridges into the program. So we fortunately got it before the program ran out of money. So that's good on our part. Small bridges and culverts, that's obviously going to be, our focus with the engineering firm. We're picking an engineering firm basically in large part, and a person at that organization that kind of specializes in that, because that's what we know we need kind of the most work on. So STEEP grant is ongoing. It is due April 15th, so we're still running on a fairly tight deadline. I did submit an 824 referral to the Planning and Zoning Commission, because that's one of the statutory requirements. And at the July 18th meeting, they approved it. So I put it in June, went to the June meeting, discussed it. They postponed a decision for a month, and they made the decision July 18th. So we have a positive referral from Planning and Zoning Commission, which is good. We have the asbestos and lead sampling report back. We have estimates from multiple demolition contractors. We have estimates from multiple abatement contractors. So we know what our costs are there. We have a firm cost estimate for the materials for the shell. The survey is complete. I've got a copy of the survey. We had the preliminary survey done in time to apply for the Zoning Board of Appeals. So we did that, and we were granted a variance for front and side yard setbacks, as well as a use variance for the structure. So we're still waiting on final engineering design for the foundation. We've met with the CROG EasyIQC vendor, which is Millennium Builders, and discussed the design of that. We still have to get the final engineering design before we can get a firm cost estimate from Millennium Builders. And at the next Board of Selectmen meeting, we're going to need a formal resolution from the Board of Selectmen to do the project. But the good news is that it looks like by August 15th, we will have a fully cost estimated project that we can execute. Um, as we know, the Board of Finance was not happy with me doing the survey without competitively bidding it. But we queried both the CIP and the Board of Selectmen, and both of those organizations motioned to agree to a waiver if the Board of Finance does. So that's where that is. And if you agree to the waiver, I will refund myself the difference in cost that I paid into that.
Want to do a motion for that now?
Sure, you can do a motion for that now or later, or whenever you so desire. It is on the agenda under new business.
Oh, it is? Okay, we can wait till then, if it's there. Okay.
Like I said, we're still working away on the connectivity grant. It's kind of slowed down a little bit. We're still waiting on the contractor to install the timber rail fence that's holding up a bunch of other things, which is kind of annoying, but we did manage to get around our problem with the having the correct amount of funding for the minority set aside. I've gone back to the state DEP because we do have some extra money for that project. And what I would like to do is I would like to do some lighting in the parking lot there at Center Street, because I think that's, that's because it's a public enough area just to keep people from parking there at night. I want some minimal lighting there. And I want to see if there's anything else. So we did fill out, Marina and I went through the paperwork required for OPM for applying for our next allotment of American Rescue Act funding. So it's still looking like the second allotment's going to be the same as the first. They have not cut it back at all, so it looks like we'll still be getting the full $478,000 for that, which would be awesome since that's forecast for paying for the community center / senior center. Recently in the town hall, we have installed a water bottle filler / new drinking fountain because the old one was getting pretty sketchy. Those are the kind of major issues there. And other than that, that's it for my report, unless you have specific questions for me.
Eric, I have a couple of comments and I'd like to revert back to the resident trooper. First off, take the 50,000 and run with it if you have it in writing that they're that much lower for the contract.
Yeah, we have the bill, so.
Sign it right away and get that going.
Yep.
I may have mentioned before that Trooper Nessie had a new job in Middletown, was leaving, but he has since informed me that he's not leaving. He likes it here. He wants to stay on as our resident trooper. So that was good news. He's a really good guy. He spends a lot of time, especially at the school, with the kids and stuff. And you always see him around town. I always see him. So I just want to make that known. And I'd like to congratulate you personally for the amount of grant money that you have brought to this town since you took over your office, or since you took that office over. Going back years and years and administrations all prior to this, that was never done. As those of us that have been here so long have known. You looks like you're looking for every penny you can get. And that's what needs to happen. We've written grants next door specifically for the firehouse, things like that, and gotten them. They don't usually turn them down, but we would like to congratulate you on what you've done so far. So that's it.
Well done. Any other comments or questions for Eric? Okay, thank you, Eric. We will move on to item 5, which is the audit status.
Okay, so most of you should have gotten a whole series of documentation for the audit. The bottom line is what I would like to, let me share the screen again and hopefully I get the right one. Hmm. Okay,
Do you want to lead with the OPM stuff about the letter from the OPM?
yeah, we can do that.
It doesn't matter to me. You take it, but it's just,
Yeah,
no.
so the thing I wanted to show is kind of what the bottom line is. You know, we've been talking quite a bit
Can
about,
I ask one question before we go in? This letter that you have up here, this management representation letter, did we sign something like this last year
yeah, we sign one of these every year.
with all these conditions in it? I mean, this is the first time I'm seeing it, so
Yeah, I think that's been pretty typical.
I know
Yeah,
it's
I mean-
pretty typical, but there's a lot of teeth in this one. And that's what I'm a little concerned about, because I read through it and I couldn't honestly say that all those things have been done. I don't know. So that's my question. So I'm just trying to, I understand the process. I understand we may have signed one last year, but this one, and I don't know, I don't remember seeing one last year. So that's why I'm asking. I just remember seeing the completed audit. So I don't remember this step at all.
Right. I mean,
So that's why I'm trying to ask for clarification. Is this, did we do this last year?
yeah, I'm pretty sure we got one of these last year. I think this is part of the normal audit process. This is what we're certifying we're doing, and they're certifying kind of they're doing for the audit. The things I wanted to bring to your attention was, the bottom line is under 9 III. It was a statement that there's a difference, between the cash in the bank account and the cash, in the audited result of $85,000. So there is a fairly significant, now their threshold for whether that's significant or not is $100,000. And there's no, they're not expecting it to match perfectly anyway. But the good news is it's under $100,000, but there is a significant difference between those two that they're going to have to adjust, for the year. So that's what I got out of that.
What about item I and item 2? I mean, I was aware that we had cash differences in, but I didn't know anything about these other 2 items that they're quoting in here.
So I think the 2 is what I think 2 is that the school, when their reconciliation, they had the costs for information technology, accounted for in the wrong, in the general education fund, not in. Basically, they had a fairly, the cost basis for their IT in their general education fund when it wasn't supposed to be there. That's what I think that is. I talked to Michael about that months ago, but I don't really it was a long time ago and I don't remember the exact details.
I'm only questioning it because at the last Board of Ed meeting, there was an exchange of information about moving IT, technology, professional services around in the budget in order to qualify for a grant. So if we did something last year that we shouldn't have done, and we're doing it again this year, and I don't quite know if it's the same thing or not, but it's just coincidentally, it's the same kind of consulting services that they were
Right.
talking about. So
Right.
I guess so that's something that we probably have to take up with the auditor to get a little bit more complete explanation.
Right.
Okay,
And item I, honestly, I don't know what that is. Why the payroll was incorrect. I mean, I think if I were to guess, it's the fact it's probably got something to do with either one of the balloon payments for the school, because $34,000, at least on the town's level, is certainly more than a month of, should be more than a month, close to a month of our payroll. And we should have had it at most one payroll paid after the, paid out after the June 30th close and accounted for after June 30th. So that honestly, I don't understand. That's got to be a question for the auditor. Anybody else have any other questions about the letter? And then we'll go on to the report from the auditor, or not the auditor, from the state. Forgot where I put it in the packet. Okay, so we did get a nastygram from the from Office of Policy Management, OPM, because we did not submit one prior to June 30th. I think the more important thing is that we know this year has been screwed up. But to me, what's interesting is that, between now and before I got here, we have basically never gotten an audit out anywhere close to on time. We haven't met the deadline realistically, in the last 5 years. So something systemically has to change, in that process, because, if you look at it in 2018, we submitted it, 2 days before we would have had triggered and got the nasty letter. 2019, the submission date was 5/7, and in 2020, the submission date was 6/22. So we're actually not that much later this year than we have been the last 4 years, but it's definitely unacceptable. That's what I got out of it.
Eric, can I just add something there? It's actually been 10 years since we've had an audit in on time. And part of it when I was on the Board of Finance, we were told flat out that because we're a small town, we're at the end of the line. So if the company that we hire has a bigger town, they try to knock out all the big stuff first. And they had promised us they would try to get to us in January, and that they would file extensions as needed. But unfortunately, because, we're paying $30,000 and somebody else is paying $300,000, we're at the end of the line. I mean, there's certainly things we need to do in-house to make that better, but I don't know that we'll ever get to, I think the best we can probably hope for is to get it submitted in February, So just historical knowledge.
Yeah. And we are by far not the only town getting this letter this year. There's a lot of them apparently.
Yeah.
But
He said we were in good company when I talked to him. He had close to 80 towns that he knew of that were filing for late, in April, still looking for extensions. So
Right.
And how many have gone past July 1st? We don't know.
that I
I
don't know.
don't know.
I think the problem is we've tipped over into July.
Very well could be. Either way, I think Eric is right. There's probably some things that we can do differently to make sure that this doesn't happen. And we really all thought, I think, or hoped that this would be the year this didn't happen, but clearly it's actually gotten worse. So it's
Right.
probably a separate discussion, but this is the problem, right?
Yeah, no question. So that's that. Now, in terms of the audit itself, what questions did you have, or what did you want to discuss?
I have one question. So we have a draft report. When does that report get finalized?
When we tell them it's acceptable to us.
Oh, that's usually not how it works. We put those management responses that are in that report are our management responses.
Well, that's what they propose us using as management responses. We're not obligated to use those. We can change those if we so desire.
Well, it is what it is. I mean. So they're waiting for us to look at this, digest it, and then say yes.
Yeah, and either you could, on the one hand, say we want to have a special meeting, and we want to have Michael, come back in and talk to us before we do it. Or you could say, this is acceptable to us. We understand we have some fundamental issues. And then, accept the audit, and then we have to write a corrective action plan for how we want to actually address this and, account for the findings that they found that were in the document.
From my point of view, and only because did this in previous jobs and things like that, audit compliance, things like that, I have a lot of questions.
Sure.
Questions that are really me needing to understand exactly what he found and, some kind of general conversation. I don't know if it's something that has to involve the whole board or if the whole, I know we'll get a presentation when the report is finalized from him. But I have more questions like, how come, we didn't find these things? What is the root, what his opinion of root cause is, I guess, is what I was kind of wanted to drag out from him. Because the report doesn't really tell us a lot of detail on that.
Correct. And I do think doing a wrap up with them is very helpful. Or would be very helpful.
So for me, it's a need to know, to be able to understand this a little bit better. And, I'm more than happy to have a phone conversation with the guy. Or, I don't know if if everybody has that level of detail of questions that they want to hear it all, or if they just want to get the overview. I kind of want to have like a dialogue with him. So that's kind of where I'm sitting.
How long historically does it take, like I said, this is my first full year on, and I know we started my first year last year at this time, kind of with the same conversation, questioning the audit and problems. And how long historically, Eric or Diane or Mark or anyone, till you do get back to the auditor and say, okay, we understand, we certify it or whatever? Do you have a good month to digest it, come up with questions? Because they've been working on it for a year, so they know every part. But for me, looking at, I want to take some time and look at it and see if I have questions. I know I'm not the primary person at all, but how long historically?
I think typically in the past, and since you guys have been on longer than I have, but I remember getting this a few weeks before the meeting. They would do a presentation at the meeting that we followed up, and we'd review it, and we'd review the findings, we'd ask questions. And then generally, I guess, say, okay, we're good with it, because, so we'd have that opportunity typically, late spring, middle of spring, and it's varied. I'm not sure how much we got really last year, but is that about right, you guys?
I think last year, and I don't think I was at the meeting. I think last July is when we got the final report and we had that
Yeah,
presentation.
last year was a different, yeah, I think it was.
It's usually about a month, but in the past, prior to getting the presentation, our treasurer usually had a reply and a plan written out as to how to address the audit findings. That was also presented as part of it. So.
Well, I think our corrective action plan this year has to be much more robust than it's ever been. So I think some effort has to come into that. Is he looking for a corrective action plan prior to issuing the final report?
No,
Okay.
the corrective action plan comes out after we submit the final report. But we don't have a ton of time to, we can't sit on it for 6 months, but you have a month or two to put out a corrective action plan.
I can say it would be, the only thing I want to add, and full transparency, I would hope that, whoever comes into the finance office and, whoever's going to run the show is a lot more proactive with bringing us the material instead of us always trying to pull it. Diane asks questions all the time. I look at things and it's really hard to understand. And it's not a criticism of Marina, who's on the meeting right now. I just would expect a leader in that kind of capacity to be really proactive. And I hope that's what we get. And, that Eric doesn't always have to try to be interpreting it for us when we're in these meetings. So I think he has a lot more on his plate to handle.
Well, and if we have a set of cleaner books, going into the end of the year, we're generally gonna, going into the audit, I should say, we'll be more successful coming out of it, I would think. And that's been a problem. Obviously, we had the financial system changeovers. We had some issues trying to get the school and town financial department grouped and then ungrouped. So, there are a lot of things playing into that. Again, not an excuse. It's just, I think, the reality of the situation. So I would hope that we're beyond that and we can knock this out and figure it out. But,
We got a lot of work to do.
yeah.
I think we can do it, and we just have a lot of work to do.
Sure.
I guess I would ask this question of the board. Is there anything in here that would make you concerned about, I guess, giving Eric our blessing to move forward and signing this or moving, this report? And typically at this stage, it's not likely to change. It is, as Diane says, it probably kind of is what it is unless we see something that we just don't agree with. And I don't think most of us have that level of information to be able to tell that. But I do think a follow-up and a wrap-up would be very helpful for all of us. Even if it's just a summary level, and we could, as Diane said, we can go into individual stuff detail later.
I think the report is what it is, and it's an accurate portrayal of what he found. I think that's his. I'm just looking for a deeper delve into understanding the hows and whys, but that has nothing to do with accepting this report and going forward. The only other question I have is this management representation letter is basically saying that we've made all these correcting entries and everything, and I don't know if that's been done or not. So. I just found that letter to have a little bit more teeth to it about putting all the accountability on the town. we're saying, yes, we're perfect, we did everything wonderful. And we know that's not true. So that's all. That's all I'm asking. So, I mean, the report is what it is, so I'm okay with the report. I don't know how anybody else feels about the report.
Are we under a timeline to get this thing signed and back?
Already getting threatened by OPM a little bit, so,
Oh, that was part of it, huh?
yeah.
Right, so we're under the gun to get this done. I mean,
They won't issue that final report until we sign that letter saying, here's our firstborn children. Yes, we did everything wonderful and, you know, we'll never do it
Right.
again.
I guess we'll see.
And then once we sign it, like you said, or whatever, then he comes to our meeting like he did last year presenting. And then we can, yes, all I'm concerned with is having enough time to digest it so that when he's here this year, if I have questions, which I will, or procedures, or, you know, that I can ask those questions. So if that doesn't preclude me from really reading everything we were sent.
Because he
Yeah,
won't come to the meeting until he issues a final report, correct? That's-
right. So there's time. So that was my
At least
only. concern.
he hasn't in the past. We've always wrapped it up after. But to be perfectly honest, up to this year, I haven't been the primary guy dealing with the auditor. It's always been the treasurer or the finance, person. I mean, this year is a little unique in that, I've ended up with a lot more interaction with Michael than I normally do. I mean, usually that's not handled by me. So I'm learning a lot of this too, to be perfectly honest.
Last year, the report was much simpler. We only had one finding. So this year it's a little different. So.
And truthfully, Eric, let's put it out there. It shouldn't have to be you. I mean, I don't mind saying it. We should have had a finance director that was handling this and reporting back to you. So that's why we're in this mess. I mean, it's great that we're learning. I want to learn too. I always like to learn, but it's just a sad situation that we had to be in it again.
Understood.
I'll just kind of say, I'm okay with accepting the report as it is and then getting him to come to our next meeting, with a final report to go over it. But I don't know how anybody else feels about it, if they want to talk to him before the report is finalized. So.
Can I ask who actually, does that have to be actually signed?
Yeah.
Representation letter?
So the signature block is town administrator, superintendent of schools, town treasurer, school business manager, which is what we've always done in the past. Now, this year it's a little questionable because we don't necessarily have, we can move the titles around. But, those are the normal signature blocks.
I just wanted to make sure.
So we
Mike,
signed one of those last year.
I'm pretty sure. I'd have to look back through my audit file for last year to be sure, but this doesn't look unfamiliar to me at all. I was expecting to get this, which means I've definitely seen this before.
Can we make changes to it after it's signed?
Not after it's signed as a document, right? So you could put an addendum or correction
you can-
together, probably.
You can, okay, as an addendum,
I would think so. I mean, it's just a letter to the auditor, and
right?
I don't know if it carries any weight, but
Right.
would certainly be a document you could create and file.
Nothing's going to change. The report is pretty much the report. The only thing that possibly could change is if we found something after the fact. You know what I mean?
Correct.
Stumbled across something.
But
But
Yeah.
we're repping and warranting that there is nothing.
we're also stating that that's as of this date, So, I mean, if you find some, I mean, like, I'm pretty sure I signed this letter this year or last year, yet we restated our inventory for last year based on the fact that, you know, we weren't, in previous years, we haven't been accounting for the fire department equipment. So our, you know, capital inventory list, you know, is different, and I'm pretty sure he corrected last year's to account for that also. So, yeah, I signed that letter last year, but there was definitely, you know, we later discovered something was incorrect, right? I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if next year we found something, you know, about this year's audit, you know, that some expense we're claiming in 2021 that really should have been categorized to 2020, you know, in the follow-on audit, and then that gets reclassified and it affects the previous statements. So, I mean, I think the likelihood of there being zero changes is probably not, you know, not super great.
Well, bottom line is we need to get an audit report completed and submitted. I mean,
And I think most of us are in agreement. This is not likely to change, right? So. Does anybody want to make a motion to just put the Board of Finance agrees with moving forward with the draft agenda once the action items are completed?
I'll
so,
make the motion.
okay,
Okay, Louise, so you're going to motion that the Board of Finance recommend that the town move forward with approving the draft audit once the action items are sufficiently completed, I guess would be a way to put it.
That's what I would say.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Rob seconds. Any further discussion?
the only thing I want to add is when we do the corrective action plan, I think the Board of Finance should review that. So I know it's not part of the report, but I don't want a corrective action plan going out without our eyes getting on it.
Well, and I think it needs to be more than a plan, you know, just a document, right? It needs to be something that we need to implement, right? So,
Right,
yeah,
right,
so I think we
yeah.
need to be part of that process for sure.
Sure. Sure. And I think there's a couple things there I want to tackle. I want to tackle the stuff regarding the physical inventory, because I think that's firmly in my wheelhouse to develop the plan for addressing that. You know, a lot of the other stuff is really not necessarily in my wheelhouse. That's more in the finance department's wheelhouse.
Any further discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes. Thank you. Okay, further questions or discussion about the audit status?
Can I just ask,
Yep.
looking forward, when are we going to start the audit that ended June 30th? And who's going to, are we going to have the same auditor?
Say we don't know yet. I'm telling you, we can't even start an audit yet because we need to rebalance all the checking accounts for this last fiscal year based off of this audit. So we got a lot of work to do. So
So do we have an auditor lined up for the fiscal year we just finished, or is it the same gentleman firm?
well, I
don't think we have made that decision, but typically
okay.
that, you know, we made that through the year. Come to that agreement and sign that.
it's, it's an advantage to us to get the same auditor because he knows how bad the audit was this year. So he should be able to be.
This is the same auditor that's done the town for years too. And
Right.
if I remember correctly, a lot of the concern was there just aren't that many auditing firms that are interested in doing small towns.
No,
I-
there's, everybody's struggling with that. No question.
I would make the suggestion that we not approach him about a contract until we've hired a treasurer, because that may weigh in his decision as to whether or not he hooks onto us. That was kind of an issue in the past.
Yeah,
And
fair enough.
can I ask one other favor? Stephen Fuss was.
Yeah, I'm
put
gonna bring
forward as
that
the-
up, Eric. Yeah, or Adrian, sorry.
Yeah, just because I don't think, unless, I don't know if he got a copy of this draft report or any of that, so he was nominated to be the liaison, so I just want to make sure he's getting looped in.
Yeah, well, I guess, so Linda, did we answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're gonna, not
Yeah,
yet,
It would
but
be
we're gonna
part of
move.
it's an ongoing thing. There's no
Right.
agreement signed down.
Right.
So Adrian brought it up, and I was gonna bring this up before we left this agenda topic, but I forwarded you all a letter that I got from Jerry Cremay, and I apologize for not sending it sooner. It's nothing really controversial, I don't think. But basically, what the letter stated was that he's formally requesting to have a member of the Board of Ed as a full participant in the audit process, and it'll help keep the Board of Ed abreast of any financial concerns as they pertain to the school Board of Ed matters. So they've been kind of receiving secondhand information and not complete. And so they asked that Steve Fuss be invited to this process, I guess. So I don't know how that kind of works from a day-to-day standpoint. I mean, I would think the school finance director kind of would take the lead on that, and it should be open to anybody, I think, that would need to be involved in it. But so I think we relayed that. I'm certainly absolutely fine with that. I have no problem with it. It makes sense if the Board of Ed feels like they're not getting up-to-date and adequate information. Anybody have any other comments on that?
So we're just talking about, and I have no problem with sharing information, so they're informed, but they cannot be part of the audit process because they're being audited. So we're the independent side. Do you know what I mean? So there still has to be some segregation.
Yeah, well, they can't change the audit results,
Right.
but just the same way that that Sherry would respond to a question from the auditor, certainly the Board of Ed could be part of that discussion, or if the town treasurer needed to respond to something, we would certainly, it would make sense to have, if it was a significant item in particular, we should be apprised of it. And I'm guessing, and Adrian, I'll let you speak as a member of the Board of Ed, that I'm guessing that that's kind of what we're trying to achieve here.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're just looking for maybe a little more articulation, having someone directly in the process. Sherry's been relaying information, but I think she had missed a couple of those audit meetings for whatever reason. I think at one point she was on vacation and then she was sick. So I think there at that point, it was the idea was that maybe there was someone else as a backup to be at those meetings.
Yeah.
At this point, I think that we have a liaison for facilities, we have a liaison for some other things. This is something that I would like. So I just want to make sure we can try to loop in Steve, whether it's like that draft audit report, so he can, have a look at it. And if we're having a meeting that's appropriate for him to be there, if he can be included, that's all.
Yeah. I mean, and Eric and Sherry, I think would have to, in particular, Sherry would probably have to monitor that and convey that schedule, because I don't think any of the other Board of Finance members are really aware of it. We don't participate in it actively. Okay. Joanne, you had a question?
I
or
just
comment?
want to say, because I am someone that works for the Board of Ed too, it's just troubling. It should have never been a problem because there was a person that was hired during this tenure. I'm sorry that they, so we have to publicly state that they weren't apprised of what they should have been apprised by the person that was in the perfect position to do it, who was going to be working with the town and the Board of Ed. And, I'm sorry if someone was on vacation or didn't make a meeting or something like that, then it's, that should be part of our procedure going forward, that they really have to get themselves up to speed with things that are going on in their job. I know I have to do it in my job. We all do. So
Yeah.
I would like to publicly state that let's do that. Let's make sure that the person that had the sole responsibility of informing the town side and the Board of Ed side, although we have broken it apart, or the town has broken it apart. You know, it's a shame, and that's why they weren't getting the information they needed. They had the perfect person right there.
Yeah, I can't speak to that. I'm not authorized to speak to that. I just wanted, I heard this discussion going on and realized that Stephen wasn't on. And so I just wanted to make sure he was getting looped in, that's all.
Yeah. We got a letter from Jerry and, yeah, I sent it out to the Board of Finance members and wanted to, you know, so we were gonna talk about it here. And I don't see that anyone would have a problem with that. I mean, but any other Board of Finance members have any concerns over that? I don't think we need to vote or anything. It's not really our process.
No, I'll speak for myself. I felt a little bit out of the loop of this audit process. It took a long time and we got a lot of generic, everything's going fine and everything. And, you know, and then everything kind of blew up at the end. So we didn't even have a lot of good information coming to us. So we just got to improve our communication. I think that'll fix that.
Other comments?
Now, if we could just make sure that Steve gets a copy of the draft report, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I sent Steve a copy of the FY21 single audit report and the FY financial statements.
Thank you.
Then-
The only thing I haven't sent him
Management.
is I haven't sent him the management rep letter because I just got that.
Make
Yeah.
sure he sees that because the school will be signing that.
Yeah, that's
So-
important.
I will send that to him also.
Other discussion over the audit process or the audit status? Okay, thank you, everybody. Hearing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item. We struck agenda item 6 from the agenda. We will move to agenda item 7, which is budget transfers. And 7A is budget transfers, supplemental appropriations.
So there aren't
Maria.
going to be any supplemental appropriations. There will be transfers. There was in the packet and you received separately a list of the transfers. I can probably try to bring those up here.
I can share it too, Eric, if you want.
Well, I'll share it.
Okay.
Sure. Oops, sorry. Okay, so are you seeing something that says budget transfers?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so that is the list of budget transfers that we are anticipating at this point.
It's just a cleanup of the last few ones that we have to do.
Correct.
$1,058.68. So
Yeah, it's not a ton of money. You know, we've done most of the stuff already. You know,
Yeah, the big one's the retirement benefits. That just is some shit.
correct.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's really just, yes.
I don't have any questions. I'm good.
Yeah, same here. Any other questions or discussion?
Yeah, I had one for Eric, under the CERT, salaries, training, vehicle maintenance. Is that the entire CERT program along with Hebron and maybe Marlboro plus us, or is that just Andover?
So the town of Andover allocates $1,000 a year for CERT vehicle maintenance.
Yep.
They spent the majority of that right at the beginning of the year because basically they didn't do their end of year maintenance last year. So they blew through the majority of their budget almost at the beginning of this last year. So,
Okay, just wanted.
yeah, but they had 100 something unspent from that.
Yeah.
Other questions for Eric? Or Marina on this? Anybody like to make a motion to approve the budget transfers?
I'll make a motion to approve the budget transfers in front of us.
Okay. Kurt motions to approve the budget transfers in the file. Joanne seconds. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you, everybody. Agenda item 7B is over expenditure requests. Eric, anything there?
Nope.
I don't think so, right? Yep, said that. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 8, old business. There's nothing actually listed under there. And then we have agenda item 9. Maybe this numbering got messed up. Maybe that was supposed to be 8. Discuss and act upon the following budget transfers. Items that will not be reconciled prior to the meeting. Do we
Yeah,
have-
so we had that held over from the previous because we thought we weren't going to. We haven't reconciled, we haven't taken out the expense for the resident state trooper. I don't think that journal entry, well, the check hasn't been cut. So there are some things that still haven't been addressed as part of this, but they're not things that require, transfers. They're
Transfers.
just things that haven't been finally paid yet. We do have the bill, so we should pay that in the next couple of days. And as far as I know, after that, we don't have, we're probably, and Marina, you can correct me, we're probably waiting on one final Amazon bill, I would think, and probably one final credit card payment to pay off that month that we may not have yet.
And we'll have the
Thing we
final
should-
payment to the auditor.
What?
We have the final payment to the auditor.
And final, the audit.
Yeah, I just got the last credit card bill this week, so I can take care of that and the trooper bill as well.
You're on mute, Mark.
Further questions? Doesn't sound like there's anything really material to the books there.
Are we gonna have the final payment from the school before the end of the month? Do we know, Marina?
Sherry and I were working on that last night, and I asked Eric if I could take a day next week with her to just get that all settled so she can, I think we're about 2/3 of the way there. We're just trying to figure out one final piece, and then she should be good to cut the check.
What's the total amount that's coming back to us?
I know one chunk is the big payroll, which I think is 300 and something thousand. The hot lunch portion for payroll is another 30 something thousand, and then some grant accounts payable checks, I think is another 33,000, I want to say.
Because right now we're off like 550,000. I just want to make sure that there's nothing that's not accounted for. We can talk about it tomorrow. I mean,
Okay, sounds good.
exact numbers.
Okay, further comments on this agenda item? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to new business. 10B is interview panel for the new treasurer. So Eric, you've got some bullet points here.
So what I really wanted to do is discuss with you potential dates. Because I know Diane wanted to be part of it. Board of Finance had said Diane and Louise would be the representatives. I'll be there and Adrian is there. So all of us are on this call. So if we did interviews either late next week or the following week, what days and times is everybody available to do interviews? We do have 5 candidates that will potentially interview.
I will make myself available whenever. So,
Thursday, Friday of next week, and any day the following week. I cannot do Monday through Wednesday, unfortunately.
So you could do August 4th and 5th,
Yep.
And
And then any day the following week is fine.
and then potentially 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Yep.
Diane, do you have any conflicts on those dates?
nope. Just mowing the lawn, weeding, watering the garden.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Okay, and Louise, what are your conflicts? Do you have anything on those dates?
I'm good except for August 8th and 9th. I'm going to be doing the 9th. I'm going to be helping with the polls. So other than that, other those 2 days, I'm available.
Oh, yeah, we wouldn't want to be doing it. Oh, that's right. When are elections? The 8th.
Yeah.
Okay, so we wouldn't want to do it the 8th either. So we're probably looking at either the 4th, the 5th, or the 10th. Probably plan on 5 hours total.
Obviously, sooner is better than later at this point, so.
Actually, it's the 9th. Primary's on the 9th.
Okay,
It's Tuesday.
Yeah,
the ninth
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
That's right.
so then we would be looking at 4th, 5th, or the 8th.
Right.
Of those Thursday, Friday, and the following Monday, what are all your preferred? When do you want to do it? I mean, we'll have to see with candidates, but and what times do you want to do with it? Obviously, I can do any time during that period. Do you have specific times? Mornings, evenings, afternoons?
No, I mean, I'll be available when we need to get this done.
Okay. So,
Morning and do it all in a day. Marathon.
okay,
Well, I mean, or, yeah, I mean, or we, if a candidate has a conflict, just, try to put them on the next day like you've been doing.
okay, so I would plan then probably on the morning of August 5th would be my preference. Pending, and then if August 5th, you want to start at 9 a.m.? And then
Yeah,
any candidates?
That's fine, Eric, but I think a couple of the people looks like they were still employed. So
Right.
maybe start with the employed people, and if they can't do that day, then push them. We're gonna have to push them later. Maybe start later in the evening or something, and do.
Well, what I was going to
do
suggest
a couple of
is-
those in the evening.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest, morning on August 5th, and if they can't do that, then plan on, we can't do evening on the 8th, because that's Board of Selectmen meeting.
Well, I mean, we just can't go past 7, right? So,
True.
so somebody can do 5 or 6. Somebody can do 5 or 6, then we'll do that.
Okay,
I mean, Luis, is that okay with you? Luis, is that okay with you?
Yeah, on the 5th.
Well, if we need to do like an evening, like say the 8th, if we need to do, because some of the candidates are employed, if we need
Oh,
to
on
do
the
like
8th. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
the evening on the 8th is
Okay.
fine.
I thought elections were the 8th, though. Am I
No,
incorrect? The
no.
9th. Okay,
No, it's the poll training is on the 8th.
got it. Okay. All right, no problem. Okay, I will endeavor to set that up. I will reach out to all the candidates tomorrow and try to line that up.
Other discussion or questions?
Question, is this treasurer gonna be full-time position? And be paid for decently for a full-time position? Put it right out there.
Right now, it's budgeted as part-time.
It's budgeted as part-time. I mean, what we budgeted for is essentially a full-time assistant finance officer and a part-time treasurer.
Okay, just wondering.
How are we going to handle the questions? Is there going to be a set of questions provided, or are we going to need to kind of put our heads together and get some questions ahead of time, separately
Well-
or together?
So I can certainly provide the last set of question lists we asked for the interviews the last time. But they're just what we used the last time. So, whoever's on the interviewing panel, we would circulate those questions immediately, probably tomorrow. And I would ask for you to send comments or changes on those questions so that we
Perfect.
have a set of questions that we're all agreed to beforehand.
That'd be great.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, I think we want to try to dig in a little more than we have in the past. Go through resumes and ask resume specific questions. So, we certainly will do some of that, but Eric's been pretty good about providing a starting point list of questions. So.
Okay, other questions or comments? Okay, an important subject. Okay, next we have 10C. It's listed on the menu. It's actually the second item in item section 10, but it's the steep grant submission waiver. So this is the item Eric brought up earlier in his report, and we pointed out that we would talk about it later. So Eric, do you want to give a quick summary?
So basically what happened is that we were over the threshold at which we should have sent something out to competitive bidding, but we flat out didn't have the time to do. So as kind of a compromise to get the board to agree to letting me do it, I basically wrote a check for the difference between the $5,000 threshold and what we actually cost, because we needed it. Because we needed that information time critically to go to the zoning board of appeals. So I did it knowing I might not get the money back, but I would certainly prefer to get the money back. The Board of Finance had asked that the CIP and Board of Selectmen concur with the decision to waive. Prior to the Board of Finance authorizing it. So both those boards have met and at their regularly scheduled meeting and concurred that it was reasonable in this case to waive that requirement. So now it's in your hands.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board?
Obviously I was part of the CIP that approved that, so I'm not going to change my position now. I know there's some concern that, every time we deviate from policy, if we keep making exceptions, why have the policy? But in this specific instance, at least I was convinced that it was reasonable and necessary.
I second that also, and I was on a CIP also when we did it. Is a motion in order, Mark?
Absolutely. Yeah.
When it was made the motion at the CIP, I'll make the motion here with us that we reimburse Eric Anderson the funds that he took out of himself for that purpose. I'm not sure exactly what it's going to come out of, but I do make that motion.
But aren't we making a motion to approve a waiver to the purchasing policy?
Right, we need to include that too.
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe it's a two-part motion.
I can do that.
Okay, so Kurt is motioning to grant a waiver to the purchasing policy to permit Eric to be reimbursed for the expense that we're discussing, the steep grant submission.
I'll second that.
Okay, the next question. Thank you, Louise. Any further discussion?
I think he got his butt chewed and he'd never do it again, unless he, absolutely has to put up his house or something, but, he got his butt chewed pretty good. And, I don't think he'll do that much often again.
Well, the reality is that if we had abided by the policy, we would not have ZBA approval right now, and we would not have a shovel-ready project. So the reality is the policy as written, given the tight timelines for grants and the fact that we don't ever know when these grants are gonna drop early enough to be able to prep for them, I am guaranteeing that we're gonna run into this problem again. Unless we adjust the policy to be more flexible in some cases. So, I mean, I really do think.
Revise that policy to make it
That-
work for today's environment. So,
Correct. I think we, in some cases, ought to be thinking about adjusting the dollar amount thresholds. And I think we ought to be specifically putting in, some flexibility. And, I'll be prepared to talk about that, but part of it is that putting out an official RFP is a big time-consuming step. And frankly, there's a lot of things we don't do because I'd have to put out an RFP to do it. So I think we need to accept the fact that we want to do things correctly. We want to account for the people's money as carefully as we can. But we also have limited ability to actually administer some of these things. And often time and manpower is more of a limitation in our case than funding.
Eric, I mean, but to be fair to you and to be fair to the policy as it's currently written, if we had our engineering done and had our in-house engineer picked, this really wouldn't have been an issue because technically that's the RFP that we're looking at that we needed, right? So once we get that settled, that'll help a little bit. And in the meantime, we need to redo the policy, which we hope that the Board of Finance can do for us. So.
Well, but even if we have an engineering firm established, the way our policy is written, that would have been a project that we would have done. And we still would have gone out and solicited bids for the survey work, because it's over the dollar threshold that currently we have to do that. So.
But technically you've already done a bid process when we pick our engineer, right? So technically you've already done that. Now, if you start talking about we need a second tier, that's a different conversation, but anyways.
Could we consider when we do get into this, not just looking at the dollar figures, but maybe a specific carve out for grant projects that have a grant associated with them?
Yeah, I think that makes sense or something. And Eric also mentions, potentially looking at professional services as a category that we might treat a little bit differently in the purchasing
Yeah.
policy. So there's a lot to consider here. I don't think we should make these changes lightly.
No.
Something we need to revisit.
And we've gotten better in the last, 3 years that, we've had Eric on board now to getting to the point where we have in-house people that we're dealing with on a regular basis. It's something the Board of Selectmen asked Eric to go out and do and get, some of these things kind of set up. So hopefully that will alleviate some of this, we got some really good bids on the engineering. Hopefully that's sorted here in the next week or so, and we'll be able to announce that as well. So.
Yep.
Okay, any further comments from the board? Questions? Okay, I guess we actually.
Good vote, I think. Oh.
Vote. We'll move forward in the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes. Thank you, everybody. Okay, the next item is listed as 10D in your application. This is the Eversource car charger application. Eric, you touched on this with your report a little bit.
Yep.
So this is, again, concurrence from the CIP and Board of Selectmen to modify the purchasing policy. Board of Finance further approval now that we have a budget.
So we did get this grant. It is a reimbursement grant. So we front the money and we get paid back for it. At the end of the day, you know, we're going to be out of pocket as a town around $4,500, which is half the cost of the physical charger. And all the installation costs and half the cost of the charger are picked up by the utility company. But again, since the total costs exceed our threshold, you know, there's a real question about whether this needs to be competitively bid or go out to RFP. And my issue with this is that, you know, again, we were under the gun. In fact, we missed the deadline for the second one of these for the library because they're definitely out of funding. So if we had waited a month, we would not have gotten that installation, number one. And number two, we need, you know, we have one of two approaches. Either we pay upfront for design and engineering costs associated with doing that, and then go out to RFP, you know, and solicit bids after we get the grant, or, you know, we get somebody that's willing to do the design work essentially for free with the understanding that they get the job once we get it, which to me, you know, using our essentially what is our in-house electrician to do that, you know, where he's doing the design, you know, and at the end of the day, it's costing the town less than $5,000. So I think it's appropriate in this case to use this methodology, because I think ultimately, you know, it's certainly faster and it's probably the same cost as sending the thing out to bid and separately paying for the design costs. So that's my argument for it.
I think whenever the audit was done, you'll find out that you actually save money by using the same contractor that designed the system. And I mean, we've all used Lenco Electric, you know, in town everywhere. So he's a taxpayer, and he's not gonna go way off the tracks with anything. So I can vouch for him. Oh gosh, sorry.
Maybe you've said this before, but how many electric vehicles does the town currently have, or do we have any, or is it a thing for the future?
We don't have any. There are 4 teachers at AES with battery electric vehicles. We are anticipating purchasing 1 Bolt EUV, you know, for senior transportation. But these will be able to charge any town vehicle, and they will also be available to the public, but the public will have to pay for it. They will be just charged at whatever, you know, our goal is not to make money on these, but, you know, we're not providing people with free electricity either.
Well, that was my point. I just wanted to understand the need. Obviously, there was a grant, so you wanted to be proactive with going after the grant and ascertaining it for the town. I just wanted to know from past meetings, I thought that's what we said. Because we don't have to provide this for, it's nice that they'll be able to use it, I guess. Okay, thank you. I don't want to get long-winded on this one especially. Okay.
Well,
If
the
memory
other-
serves, sorry, go on, Eric.
no,
I think I was going to say what you're about to say, so go ahead.
so the other thing is that the state is pushing for all new construction to have at least 20% of the spots have chargers available in those spots. And because it's a little unclear with the law, the language is, the law is out, but the implementation language for it is not. So it's not completely clear whether the new community/senior center is going to require electric chargers put in. But this gets us all the infrastructure, gets us 2 chargers now, and everything essentially pre-done, so he could add 2 more chargers. So at least we would satisfy a portion of that, you know, if we end up having to do that. So I see that as kind of a 2-pronged thing. It's generally good for the public, and it may lessen our requirements for the new building. But I don't know that for sure yet. I just, you know, we don't have the final language of that.
Before you
I-
say anything, see what the state's doing with that electric bus that just burned up on on that highway between New Britain and Hartford. They're taking steps with the Connecticut Firefighters Association to do something about it. That thing was, I mean, it was crazy on fire, mainly the battery and stuff. So before we go signing anything, let's check and see what the state's going to do in regards to that. That's a short ways off. Just to brief you, I don't know if you've seen it on the news, but
Yeah, I saw it. Electric cars do burn really nicely. There's no question. Lithium ion batteries, when they go, it's exciting.
Just a quick question. Now, if we do get chargers at the library meeting, we were talking about this the other night. Is it like a handicap parking spot? If you don't have a car that's being charged, nobody can park there, or
Well,
how does that work? Because library has very limited parking, so.
that's how it's supposed to work. But I can tell you, driving around, you see it ignored fairly regularly. I mean, we would put up signage to that effect, but
Glastonbury, who's got like a dozen of them at their senior center, they have markings on each spot for the electric cars to park, similar to to an ADA sticker. So
yeah,
a town like that, they'd have their police department come down there and write people up too if they were parked there without a electric car. So that
right.
much we do know, because I installed the overhead underground power to feed those when that center was built.
Yeah, and I do think that, I think if we were sitting here in 10 years, probably almost all our senior transportation vehicles are going to be electric. The state is pushing very hard, both at the state level and for municipalities to be adopting electric fleets. So I think whether we want to do it or not, I think we're going to be stuck doing it. And the sooner we get the infrastructure in place to deal with it, the better off we're going to be. That's my personal take.
Believe it or not, our fire truck committee is looking at electric fire trucks now also because of the mandates coming from both the federal government and the state. And right now, an average pumper is $2 million to replace one truck. It's $2 million. We, the company I work for, builds them. We built the first 4, and right now they went from 1.2 million to over 2 million. So I highly doubt that that'll become law. I really do, but we'll see.
Are we taking action on this tonight? Or are we just, I'm just wondering where it's going.
Well, it'd be nice if you would agree to modify the purchasing policy to allow me to do it, because we have the grant and I would plan on ordering the parts tomorrow. But I won't plan on doing it if I don't get the waiver, and we'll figure out, I guess, we'll go to RFP on it.
So
And
basically, just to clarify, right, Eric, we're looking for a waiver of the purchasing policy in this instance to allow you to move forward to purchase the equipment for the charger to allow the grant to be utilized.
Right.
Correct.
And to clarify again, as Eric mentioned, the actual net cost to the town is $4,500
$4,500.
roughly.
correct.
So
That's
there, we kind of debated whether the purchasing policy, it's under the threshold if you look at just cost to town. It's over the threshold if you look at the total project cost, which we're not paying.
Well, your initial direct.
The
cost,
obvious
so
case for a
You're
waiver.
gonna have to put the layout, right? So, yeah, it may not be clear. It might be something that needs to be clarified in the policy moving forward.
I will move to grant a waiver for that project. I think that's a perfect case for a waiver, actually.
Anybody like to second that motion?
Something that went to CIP and Board of Selectmen too? And they're
Yep.
okay with it already?
CIP was okay with it. Yep.
Yep,
I'll second it then, because I'm okay making a waiver to the policy, as long as we have concurrence from the other two parties that are part of this purchasing policy.
Yep.
I don't think it's behoove us to make it this on our own, so I will second that.
Okay, any further discussion or questions?
The only quick question I have, I mean, I'm okay with it too. I wasn't opposed or anything, but this was an item that wasn't budgeted this year, right? So the 45,
it was not budgeted, but it will come out of the building maintenance fund.
okay,
So it's funded, there's not, we don't really have to do any gymnastics to come up with the money.
okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item labeled 10E in the agenda. That's a school request for paying the generator expense. Eric, do you want to address that, summarize that?
Sure. You had gotten the letter last month.
There's no
and-
supporting documentation in our package for that, so there's nothing
Right.
in there.
Well, you had gotten that documentation the month before, and you had chosen to say that was a Board of Selectmen decision. And I think the Board of Selectmen has basically said that's a Board of Finance decision, although they're not really in favor of it. Adrian, would you agree that that was the summary of the Board of Selectmen position?
I don't think there was anything in our last packet either, so. So that's why I'm thinking, I don't think we have, I mean, I understand the concept of what's going on, but I don't remember. I remember you got copies in your office, but I didn't take any with me, so.
I cannot speak for the Board of Selectmen as a whole because we did not take a vote on it. But we did basically say that it needed to be discussed with the Board of Finance. We didn't feel it was within our purview. Especially, there was no one that was putting forward a motion to do it. I could say that, but I cannot say that the board denied it or what have you. So I have my own opinion on it, but I'll leave that. It's really up to you guys what to do with this. I have my own opinion, but I'm going to leave it up to the Board of Finance to decide.
So Eric, in terms of, you said their documentation, I mean, we received a note from Valerie covering the issue from her side, but I don't know if there's anything firm other than that, or was that while I was on vacation that came through?
So let me just share my screen real quick.
There were invoices.
Hang on.
But I don't think they've ever been submitted in the packet, so.
So in this, can we also just summarize the situation?
So the situation is this, here's the letter from the superintendent. So basically it was her ask that the town consider covering a portion, all or a portion of the cost of the maintenance and repair of the generator. Because her opinion is that since the town utilizes that to allow the gymnasium to be used as an emergency shelter, the town should share some of the expense for it. That was her rationale for it. And so she requested that we reimburse them for one $3,000 bill for, repair and consider, paying a portion of the funding going forward. That is her ask. If, I could put my 2 cents into it, or you can, make your own,
I'd like
I'm not-
to, I'd like to ask, has the school board ever gone to, say, Blanco Electric? It says, how do we light the school along with heat the school and even air condition the school with this large generator that you have? How can we add on the lighting? Because that's the only thing that I'm seeing that it doesn't do. And that's why they can't run the school off the generator. They should be able to run the school off the generator with lighting and everything. And now with the upgrades coming to next door, that should all be figured in. And with them possibly doing their part to do that. But do you know of any study done on why the generator won't handle the load of lighting at AES?
That's not something that I've had any input in. I mean, I can tell you that the generator backup runs their HVAC system and keeps the building from freezing. So it's not like it doesn't have any value to the school. It definitely has value to the school. But at the same time, I recognize that it does have some value to the town too, because it does enable us to use that as an emergency shelter. So the question is just, is that something you think is appropriate for the town to take some or all of the expense or not?
So to be clear, we were told that the school could not open on generator power. So even if they had the lighting, they're not allowed to open for whatever reason. I don't know we weren't given the explanation as to what that was exactly or why, but
I would find out what that reason is.
yeah, Val didn't share that. She said she couldn't open on generator power though. So
Yeah, because it won't, right now, as far as she says it right in her letter, it will not, feed the lights. But if they change everything to LED and of course, we know Eversource offers those grants to do the entire facility LED.
well, they've already done most of the facility with LED. I think they have one wing left because I was helping work on that earlier this year.
Okay, well, if their HVAC and heating run off their new systems that they just put in, that came from town tax dollars, why can't they add the lighting? That's a couple circuit runs or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know, Kurt, but that's beyond this conversation.
We
Yeah,
probably
okay.
have to do some electrical work, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
But, for history, the school they needed a generator and by having the school be an emergency shelter, they were able to get some grant money to help put that in. But to be clear, we also have the fire department and the community center as declared shelters as well. Again, basically for the same purposes, so.
I think it's always difficult.
Needs to pay for their own generator. That's my opinion, because it's to preserve that building and the loss of power, because it's, keep the pipes from freezing and it's part of maintaining that building. No different than the fire department, keeping their generator running out of their budget or anything else. So that's where I stand on it.
Joanne, I think you had started to speak.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I just think it's always difficult coming in after the fact. I sort of see it as a school situation too. And to be asked at the end of the year kind of is putting us in an unfair situation. I mean, things like this should always be discussed, budgeted for, talked about, when things are over with and the fiscal year is ending and, a couple weeks after, it's difficult. There's always room to discuss things and like people have pointed out, there's other places that could be the shelter. So it's just hard to receive this after the fact and then, have to make a decision.
And just another piece of information for me, I did attend the Board of Ed meeting, I think Joanne did too, where they were discussing this. And the school does have the money to pay for this. So they do have the money and they do have grant funds available. So it's not like they don't have the money to pay for this. It's not like they're coming to us for an appropriation because they can't pay for it.
It'd be a
That
good
was-
spot for the new town engineer to go over and study if they can add the lighting to the generator system or electrical system over there. Eric,
Well, that would probably be, you would be talking about hiring an MEP engineer, so that probably, I mean, I could ask whether the engineering firm has that
he
capability.
could direct whoever needs to handle it if he can't handle it.
Well, I think we're getting into tactical stuff here. I think we probably should try to stick with the agenda item about whether we feel like we should reimburse for any of the generator repair cost. It's not totally clear to me, so that, because it almost sounds like from Valerie's message that we couldn't keep it open as an emergency shelter. AES cannot remain open on generator, because the school, so she's saying the school would have to close, but all right, okay. If there were power outages, but okay. But that, not necessarily that it couldn't be used as an emergency shelter, okay.
Correct.
Right, and the argument she's making is that it's capable of being used as an emergency shelter, which accrues to the benefit of the town, whereas they can't open the school under generator power, so therefore we should pay for it. That's the argument.
Yeah.
Right?
In
Or
a
share the
nutshell.
cost or something. I mean, my personal opinion is that I agree with Joanne. I think that it's a little more complicated to come back in the middle of a year and with something that's not, it's not insignificant. I get that, but it's also not a $20,000 bill. And these are the kind of things that frankly I do think need to be budgeted for. $3,000 is not insignificant, but it's also, that is generally not going to break things. A maintenance contract might be one way to go. That way, if it's an issue with budgeting, you end up paying more per year, but you level load and you have accurate costs throughout the year. So just some ideas of how we could get around that. I would say that if the board does agree to this, or to maybe some partial reimbursement to the school for the use of this, that should just be a one-time thing, with the expectation that going forward, this kind of thing should probably try to be budgeted and level loaded within the budget if possible. That would be my recommendation.
They
Can I
do
move the
have
question?
grant funds available for this money. She said it in her meeting.
Just as a general principle, that's my feeling that,
But if there's grant funds available, it shouldn't come out of taxpayer money.
The only thing I'd want to add is if they do have money left over, I think they are going to finish the year with some money, they can pay for it. And then we talked about it could be discussed in the future or something. Like we all said, if they had already expended their full budget and had no money left. Yeah.
All right, we can kick this around all night. Can I move the question?
yeah. Would you want to make a motion? I mean, so we can make a motion, or we can just move on to the next agenda item too. Take no action.
I personally think we should just take action on it.
Well, if anybody feels like we should authorize some reimbursement to the school, then, let's make a motion to that effect. And how much specifically you think would be appropriate to reimburse it. We generally don't vote to not take action. So, we just leave it as is and move on.
I agree. Okay.
I
Does
mean,
anybody
if
want
we
to
do
make a
anything,
motion?
we could consider, if we did anything, we could consider splitting it with them. Yeah, if we did anything, just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I would say that would be kind of I wouldn't be inclined to do the entire thing, but
It's a multi-use thing. So that was my only thought. I don't feel strongly about this either way, honestly. So I'll go with others, but I just wanted to throw that out there as the possible compromise solution.
anybody want to make a motion to reimburse the school district for any or all of this particular extra generator expense? Okay, hearing none, I think we move on then to the next item. Okay, thank you. Item 10F on the agenda is the school request for payment for the cool program fees. I think all of you got information from Valerie that shows there's a letter about the cool fees and also the original agreement. As I understand it, these payments have been going to the town instead of to the school district for the last few years, and were probably inappropriately deposited into the town's accounts. So she's asking for a reimbursement for the funds.
Do we know why it was done incorrectly? Or was it just,
No idea why. I mean, it really doesn't matter why.
Done in error, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, they signed an original contract, school program signed an original contract which specified that they write the checks to the Andover Elementary School and send them to Laura Edwards. But that's not what they did. They sent the checks to the town. And so the town has been happily depositing them since like 2018, pretty much. And not really thinking anything about it. And the school hasn't really been tracking to understand that they weren't actually getting the money in. So the reality is, while the town has been receiving the money, it's reimbursement for maintenance and lighting and other things for usage at the school. So it's definitely not, it definitely should be going towards the town.
and this is 150 per month for all 12 months, not the school
For
year.
10 months, 10 months,
10 months.
150 for 10 months,
I was trying to find that.
according to the agreement.
Okay.
Right. And then separately since then, they've been paying that same monthly fee during the summer when the cool summer camp has been using it.
Couple things I want to point out. Number one, part of that, the cool money that has been in the past for audits and books that have been closed and everything, what's done is done. It's $1,500 is really, it's got to stay there. I think they can have the money going forward. And this current fiscal year that we're just closing out now, they sent this list of checks that they got. But two of those checks that they said went to the town, in their documentation that they put there, they were posted to a BOE account. So if you look at the detail on that, so I'm very confused on that. So it looks like two of the checks, $720 check was for cleaning for camp. It had nothing to do with the cool rent. It was cleaning for camp. That's what it's notated. So it may have been a side agreement that they had with cool, but that was tagged to a BOE expenses account. It's right on their printout there. So I'm assuming that went to their account. All the money goes into one account in the town anyway. So what bank account it got deposited into doesn't make a difference. It's where it gets journaled to. And then there's another check for $900 from last year. I'm talking this past fiscal year we just talked. That was for $900. And that looks like it went to town rentals. So we can send that $900 to them because it got booked to town rentals. And then there's another check for $600 that they have in their packet from last August, but that one got entered to BOE expenses. So I don't think the town has that money. So right now, the way I look at from their documentation, there's $900 from the last fiscal year we just left that got credited to town rentals account. And that's how I read that report. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know, because I don't know where the source of that report is. That's supposed to be a journal entry report, I think. So,
Marina can probably answer that. Marina?
Yes, so the 720, I believe there was a COVID case last summer during camp. So they used some town supplies to disinfect, sanitize, what have you. So the pool was reimbursing the school for that. So that went to them. And then anytime I had gotten the pool rent check, I had just followed what Barbara had done of where she had put it to the town rentals account. So one of them did go there, and one of them I put to the Board of Ed expense, which I guess now in turn was correct. So I think there's just that one check that you said, Diane, that would have to get cut back to the school.
But Marina, you're saying that Board of Education expenses, you're confirming that that is a school account, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, which is what Diane had suggested. So, okay, so it sounds like then that, just to summarize, it's what Diane had suggested, that the last three checks that apply in the last fiscal year, if we were to look back that far, even though the years should be closed, is, one of them is not one of the cool reimbursement expenses, the one for $720. The one for $600 was credited to the school accounts, and then there's one for $900 that was credited to the town accounts. I personally had some real concerns about going back more than in the current fiscal year, or last fiscal year, technically, going back more than one fiscal year, because I think that is a little problematic from a, maintaining the book standpoint. I mean, certainly we could opt to do that. It doesn't really change our financials for the year, but I mean, again, I don't think it was really appropriate, but it was done, and it's kind of water under the bridge. But I think it's something we should take into consideration as my 2 cents.
And that's, and as we discussed, that's about $1,500 in the past that they're out.
900 for the last fiscal year.
No, I mean like past.
Oh,
I
beyond
would
that,
go back and check them up, because you'd have to check to see where they were actually credited to, because if you look at what we were told in the documentation we have, not all of those checks got credited to the town, so.
Right.
Yeah.
well, if it's probably more like 2,500 based on that, where the accounts posted to document that we received along with our letter from Valerie. So it's probably 2,800 bucks.
So-
Just looking at it. About adding
The
it.
concern here is basically preserving our books as audited. Going back in time is problematic for that reason. I guess the only thing I would say is that the obvious potential workaround is the one that Valerie kind of put in there about the generator. But that's not, going back and opening up like a past budget year. I think I agree with you on that. I don't think we do that.
I mean, we can go back to this last fiscal year we just finished, because we haven't
Yeah.
audited yet. We haven't finalized and closed out.
That one, I don't think anybody would disagree with that, right? Hopefully not. I think that's just very clear, right? That $900.
Yeah.
I think, that just goes back to the school. I'm just saying, because obviously Val's request was more than that. So, to address it fully, if we're going to say no to that, yes to this, no to that. I'm just talking it through.
I think it's good that she brought it forward, and it should just be looked at, getting accounted for correctly in the future, that the school gets to use whatever comes in for what they should use. And we fund them the 900 or put it where it needs to be. Agreed. Should we make a motion, Mark? Are we at that point, or?
Well, yeah, we can make a motion at any time and continue discussion.
I'll make a motion that we return to the school the check from January of 2022 for $900 that got credited to the town rental account incorrectly for $900. And we leave everything else as is.
I'll second it.
Okay, Joanne seconds. Thank you. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I don't think there's a as far as money goes with the cool program, having a grandson in both cool and the cool camp, they charge quite a bit because I hear it from my son all the time about writing the checks. So I don't think there's any loss for money either place. So but we can vote on it.
Other comments, discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
So
Any
I'm
abstentions?
an aye. I'm an aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes. Thank you, everybody. Okay, next,
Before we get off that topic, I just
Yeah.
wanted to say one thing. I did reach out to Amy Knox and through her Jess Courier. And the first thing I said was, the last time you had any kind of agreement in writing was 2018. So the first thing they need to do is they need to update that agreement. But that agreement's not between the town and Cool. That agreement is between the school and the Cool program. And since the town has their own checking account now, they should write those checks directly to AES, which is what they should have been doing in the first place. And if you notice, if you looked at the actual check stubs, most of the checks said, to town of Andover in rent. So, I mean, Barbara, and Marina, maybe they should have been done enough research to figure out that wasn't actually a legitimate rent check to us and it was supposed to be to the school. But, if I looked at it that real quickly, I would have done exactly what they did, which is dump it in the rental line item revenue and move on. So, I mean, I get it. I think that's a procedural problem between the school and Cool, and that can be corrected going forward. Yeah.
okay,
Question, Eric. I know they use our buses, I think, to take the kids to the lake and stuff. You got two of the LD buses parked up there. Is the town reimbursed anything for that and the drivers? You have to pay the drivers, correct?
Yes. The town gets some reimbursement for that. And so from the town's end, what I've asked the town's attorney is to redraft. There was kind of this crazy agreement in 2020 between the town and the school and the Cool program and the Lake Association. And I want to simplify that. What I want is I want a contract between the town and Cool so that the town, basically subcontracts a summer camp program, and hires Cool to do a summer camp program. And the reason why I want to do that is because they kind of ride on our town insurance while they're doing the camp and use town facilities. Now, I think maybe the school needs their own separate agreement with Cool, but that's between the school and them, not us and them. But I am working with the attorney right now to redraft an agreement so we have something, documented in paper what the town's relationship with Cool is and what we provide them in terms of transportation and insurance and other things, if that makes sense.
There are some towns around that do that, right? That help sponsor a recreational camp during the summer, during the summer for kids in their town.
Yeah, it's a very common thing for towns to do. Most towns do it through their own recreation, commissions. But remember, we don't have any paid recreation staff. We have no rec director. We don't have we don't have the ability to implement that at the town level. So our only way, if we're gonna, as a town, we decided in 2018 or 19 that it was important that we have some sort of summer recreational program for kids. The only thing we can really do is sub that out. And Cool is the logical organization to sub it out to.
Okay, we don't have it now, but who knows what's going to happen in the future. I can remember playing soccer myself as a young kid in the Columbia organization. The elementary school up there. So they ran that every year, and they invited the local kids, from the area. So great information. Thank you.
I was gonna say, it's probably a big item to discuss in mass at a different meeting, and there's a lot of questions.
You're muted, Mark.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this topic? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to item 10G, which is not on the agenda yet printed, but this is the discussion and I guess vote about voting annually for chairman and vice chairman for the Board of Finance. I don't remember reading this in the charter, but it does seem like a reasonable practice, I'll say, either way. I'll also say that I'll probably abstain from any votes on this. We'll see. And I know I haven't, it's been a busy year for me over the last year. I expect this to get better. It was obviously a lot going on with my last job, and missed some meetings and took some from Germany. And so it's been a little bit of and got back July 4th on vacation, started a new job July 5th. So it's been a little tough for me to make this, and I have no problem if somebody else wants to step up as chairman, or I will also willing to continue. So, I'm there, but no bad feelings or pride of ownership either way. I will say, just as kind of a preface, that I think whoever does serve as chair and preferably vice chair as well, it'd be a very good idea to attend the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities has a workshop that they put on from time to time about running legal and effective meetings. It's very eye-opening. I mean, I've had some experience with Robert's Rules of Order before. So, I probably had some insight into that before I got there, but it still was a very, very good and informative process and meeting. And so I think that that's important, because we do run into Freedom of Information Acts, public participation issues, et cetera, that are important to be aware of. And got some really good advice at that. So if anybody on the board, I think that was offered at no charge, but it was well worth the ride out to Scotland or wherever it was. I think they held it that year. So I would recommend it. It's eye-opening. It's only a couple hours in the evening. So that being said, I guess I'll open that up for discussion. I think the first thing is, do we want to just set our internal rules such that we will vote annually for a chair and vice chair of the Board of Finance? Eric, you said you thought it might be in the charter. I think it was you that said that. I'm not sure.
I did say that, and I could look real quick if you wanted to. I mean, I know on the Planning and Zoning Commission, we voted annually. There's nothing that says you can't vote annually, certainly. If you give me a few seconds, I'll punch out here real quick and do a little research, pull up the
I
chart.
think it's just a good practice. If everybody agrees, why don't we just take a vote that we vote annually? I mean, I think,
It certainly is not a bad practice, I think. So if somebody wants to make a motion, we can make a motions and then either vote and discuss it further there.
I think I'm the one that brought it up earlier tonight, just because I thought it was something we standardly did. Any commission or committee that I've been on, we've always done that too. So I just thought it was a good idea. I appreciate everything that you said, Mark, there too, with suggestions, and just since I brought it up, I will be making a motion, and I really think it is because I think we need to have someone that does have a lot of time and everything, and it's not, and someone that can be really committed to it. And I think we all are. There's no one that I would say isn't. So I don't know if we're waiting for Eric to give us more rules, but that was my only thought.
But we can certainly set our own right here. As Diane said, it's good practice. So, we can just, even if it doesn't say anything in the charter, we don't think we want to contradict the charter, but I don't think the charter is going to prohibit this.
I hope that we can decide to just have an annual vote and that kind of thing too.
Do we want to specify a time of year? Do we want to say, July meeting, August meeting, just so it gets on a schedule. Instead of
That's
just
why
saying,
I-
well, annually we'll do it.
Right.
Fiscal
July
year.
fiscal year, so that's why I brought it up tonight. And I thought,
I'd like to make a motion that we have a vote for chairman and vice chairman if you want, every, in our July meeting. That's normally the regular scheduled meeting in July. And I think 90% of the boards and commissions in town do that. Like I said, the fire commission has done it as long as I've been there. So that's close to 55 years. They've elected-
Anybody want to second that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, Joanne seconds it. I think personally, I think the timing is good because not only is it the fiscal year, but it's also generally the first board meeting following the municipal elections.
Yes.
Right, so that also helps kind of introduce, new members, or if it's not right after, it'll be the one following, so it makes sense. Kurt, you're on mute, I don't know if you realize that.
No, I agree. I agree with everything you said, Mike.
Further discussion? Okay, hearing none, I guess I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 I
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Hearing none, the motion passes. So that being the case, I think under this agenda item, if somebody wants to go ahead and, we can either discuss and or nominate people for either both chairman and vice chairman.
I'm gonna go ahead and nominate, I don't know if it'll be seconded, but I'm gonna nominate Diane Choquette to be the chairman and Mark, you to be the vice chairman for this upcoming year. Unless you want to do it one at a time.
I think you can do both. That's your prerogative. I would say there's reason not to.
I'll second that.
Okay, Kurt seconds it. We have any discussion?
Just my discussion is, I think Diane has proven, not that you haven't, Mark. I always like to say I'm being just, I'm very direct. So anything that I say in a positive to one is not a negative to another, because I wouldn't be afraid to say a negative. So I just think that Diane has really dove in this year. She's been behind the scenes. She's been everywhere. She's admitted she's had the time because she's retired. She's just there. She gives us great information. I work a big full-time job too. I try to keep up, but I don't keep up half as much as she does. I just think with this particular year coming off this audit with so that's my discussion. So it's not a negative towards anybody. It's just a very big, big positive towards her.
Yeah, understood. Thank you. Yeah. A lot of it's running the meeting, and don't forget, I'll say that generally it's the chairman who has to present the budget in front of the town at the town meeting. So take that for what it's worth.
You're welcome.
You know what you're
You can
getting
always
into.
delegate it, but that is the typical process. So.
Be careful what you wish for, Frankly, I think either way is going to work great for the board. The way we have it now, or Joanne's proposal. I think Mark's done a great job. Diane's done a good job when she stepped in, when he hasn't been available for travel reasons or what have you. So, I'm neutral on this one.
Yeah. Other discussion?
Actually, I'd like to ask Diane how she feels about that. Is she up for it?
I think I would love the opportunity to do it for the next year. We got a lot to accomplish this year. I am getting more involved in the town, and I was going to bring this up at our open discussion, but I'll just let you know. I'm working with Jeff McGuire because Marina's gone in a week, a little over a week. Well, guess who's learning on accounts payable over the next 2 days?
And we thank you, Diane.
So, whatever I can do to help out to ease the transition and do whatever. And it's also a good learning experience for me to, understand what happens behind the scenes, and it'll help us be more effective as a board, because I'll be able to share more knowledge that, there's a lot of things we don't know unless somebody tells us. And, so I think we'll all learn from the experience, I'll tell you. And I am anxious to look at Edmunds and seeing what it can do for us as a piece of software, because I don't think we're utilizing it the way we need to use it and to make our lives easier. So yeah, this is another thing on my little agenda to look at. And see
Good
if we
question,
can.
Louise. I was wondering about that myself. Okay.
So,
Kudos to you.
if I go a little crazy, but you know what, I have the time. And there's a lot of need in the town right now, so I'm willing to put the effort in to do it. And
All right. Any other comments or discussion?
Okay, I just have one thing to say is that I'm gonna say is that I looked at the charter and I don't see anything. The only thing I really see is section 608, which is rules of procedure. The rules of procedure appear to allow you as a board to set any rules and procedures you so desire. So if you as a board have decided that you want to vote every July, you have every right to vote every July.
Yeah, that's kind of what I suspected might be the case. Okay, thanks. Yeah, I think that is the case here, that, and that's pretty typical, but I do think it's an important thing to be addressed in our procedures and policies. So Joanne, thanks for bringing that up. It's really not something we considered, at least I hadn't. Okay. Thanks, Eric. Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. I am gonna vote.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Very good. Congratulations, Diane. I think as of next meeting, we probably put this into effect. That makes sense to everybody
Yeah.
as a procedural thing. Okay. It's not that she hasn't taken over meetings in my half or whatever. So, all right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate the candor and the support. And thanks especially to Diane and Joanne and all the rest of you who put the time in. So again, a lot of it's about making sure that we manage the meetings too, and I'm sure it'll all go well. All right.
And Mark, thanks to you too. You're a great facilitator.
Thank you.
I can't say I'm gonna miss you because you're gonna still be there.
I will still be here.
Okay.
We come not to bury him, but to praise.
Yeah.
That's a very ominous thing. I hope you know.
Yeah, I said that.
In reality. Yeah, okay. All right. So I guess if there's any further discussion on that. Okay, very good. We'll move on to agenda item 11, which is the approval of the meeting minutes for Thursday, June 29th, special meeting. I'm going to abstain from this because I was not at this meeting, but Eric, I just want to point out that they're not posted on the town's website and they really need to be. So
They're not posted at all?
I didn't see them. I guess they are maybe as part of the packet if it's in the packet here.
No, I was gonna say, I think I screwed up and didn't. put 'em
Usually link to usually Amanda used to post a link that brought you to the minutes section.
There wasn't a link, but I did find them going under the Board of Finance
Okay,
and go to
you did,
minutes.
okay.
They were
For
there.
June 29th?
Yeah, I read them today.
Huh, okay, because I went to the minutes and agenda for the Board of Finance for 2022, and I don't see any minutes. The agenda is there for June 29th, but I don't, let me refresh just to make sure that, yeah, I don't see it.
Okay, let me see. I read something.
Okay, anyway, so they're not in here. So I
Well,
don't
they're
know.
not post, I mean, I did not read them, so I just.
Yeah, so they're not part of the packet unless people have found them or kept them separately or had them distributed separately. I don't know that we can really vote on them.
Okay,
Yeah.
I
no,
found Board of Finance, June 29th, special minute meetings. They were, you had to look for them, but I found them. So,
Oh, look.
but it's
you know,
under,
I found them the other day, but I can't find them right now, I have to admit.
it says, if you go under meetings and meetings and agendas.
Minutes and agendas.
all Board of Finance meeting agendas. And somewhere, for some reason, underneath there, it says special meeting minutes. So they're kind of in the wrong place, but I did find
All
it.
right,
So
so
they're under agendas, not under minutes then.
Right.
Okay, because I'm looking under minutes. They're not under the minutes. Okay,
No.
so let me look
No,
under the
yes,
agendas.
the agenda's there and the packet's there.
Yeah, it used to be in the packet, but it wasn't an attachment.
Oh,
in the
yeah,
packet.
yeah. You're right. They are.
They're
You're under the minutes. Okay.
okay, so they're posted
Yeah.
incorrectly. That's
That's
our
posted in the
error.
wrong location. Okay.
Do we wait to vote on them when we, so they're usually in our packets and we're able to
Absolutely.
read them? Yeah, I didn't read them because they weren't in this packet.
There's generally nothing pressing about approving meeting
Okay.
minutes, so we can easily just defer this to the next meeting. Okay. All right, further discussion on that? Okay, hearing none, I guess we will move on to agenda item 12, which is any liaison reports.
Community Center, I'll just give you a quick update. We're just still working on getting that RFP pulled together. We're getting close, so we can get it out for the design and build phase. And that's where we stand. Community Center, we're still having our meetings, but nobody comes except me and Ed. But we sat under the tent last time and pretended we were in the building. And said thank you to everybody who showed up for all their hard work. So most of the hard work for the committee has been done, so it's just a matter of
Okay, they're still in the meeting.
getting to the next phase. And that's all I have on my stuff.
Hello?
We
Okay.
we actually kind of addressed
We're still
much
in
of
the
what the
meeting. I
CIP
come
meeting
back
was
in about
about
5 or 10
by
minutes.
approving those deviations from the purchasing policy and whatnot. That was the meat, I think, of our
Okay.
CIP discussion. Am I missing anything, Eric, Kurt? I'm a little tired at this point, so make sure I'm not missing something that we talked about at length.
Okay.
No, I'm gonna have something in a couple minutes when you get to board open discussion.
Good night.
Something that we haven't really discussed.
Tomorrow.
But it's really early in the process and I'm certainly not expecting any action from the Board of Finance tonight, Don.
Rob, I did remove, I don't know if you saw it in my email, but I did.
Yeah,
remove
the
that
sign.
The digital sign that I was proposing through the fire department to the school in town. I did not get backing from the board of directors at the fire station, and I nixed the whole project. So that's something else that we deleted.
Okay. Okay, if there's no other liaison reports, we'll go on to agenda item 13, which is the board open discussion. Anybody has any, Eric, you said you had something, so I guess shoot, you can go first.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly where I want to go with it. I think it's got to go through Board of Selectmen's got to chew on it before it would even potentially come back to you. So I think you guys all know how difficult it's been purchasing equipment lately, vehicles and such not, because the build times, get stretched out so far. We did, we're not obligated to do anything. I want to say that right up front. So Jay did get quotes on the replacement for one of the Public Works fire trucks. As you remember in our plan, in our capital plan, we assume we're going to replace one roughly every 5 years.
Eric, it was a dump truck, not a fire truck.
Dump.
I want to make that straight.
It's late, I'm tired. So we really had no idea how far out we needed to get this thing in the pipeline because the supply chain has been so screwed up for everything. I mean, there's a lot of power equipment now that's 1-2 years out to order. So the goal was never to have a new plow truck this fall. The goal was always at the earliest to have a new plow truck for next fall, just prior to plow season. However, we do have the potential to get one. We do have a slot if we chose to go for it this year, which would get us the chassis sometime middle of August. And then it would go to the body shop and we would have it probably November-ish time frame, which gets it 1 year before we really had anticipated or wanted. And we haven't signed anything. We're not on any obligation to do it. The question is just, is it worth it to do it a year early financially? And that I have a hard time answering. I mean, our original quote on it was $241,000. When we looked at it, when we quoted it out last spring, 241,760. They announced in May they were adding a surcharge to each vehicle, which was bringing the price up to 245,556, which is what we would pay if we did it right now. If we reordered right now under the same contract today, it would be 266. So the prices are still going up. And the question is it worth even considering doing it 1 year early? And ultimately, I think that's a Board of Selectmen decision to approve in CIP before it comes back to Board of Finance. I'm just putting this back to you because Jay and I were both quite surprised when Freightliner came back and said, oh, we actually have a build slot for you. If you want it, you can get the truck body, sometime in August, or the chassis sometime in August. So that's kind of where we're at with that. We don't have the money set aside for it. I don't think we even have the money to, if we did say a 4-year lease on it, to pay the first year of the 4-year lease out of what's left in capital for public works after the purchase of the skid steer. So, I mean, while it would be possible to do it, I'm not really recommending it because we could spend money from Town Aid Road to help pay for the first year of, a 5-year lease. But the question is it worth going a year early, potentially to save 20 to maybe a little bit more, $1,000 on acquiring. So that's a question I'm going to be asking the Board of Selectmen to consider, and CIP. And I'm not really weighing in either way. I hadn't planned on getting this thing this year, and but I do get Jay's point that if we take the build slot right now, it's $20,000 cheaper than if we ask for a build slot right now. So that's all I wanted to say. I don't know whether you guys have any comments or questions or feedback for me.
Does Jay have any or any possibility of him taking maybe the 20-something thousand out of his salary temporarily? Can we pay him back later? Huh?
I don't think Jay would go for that. I don't think.
Just wondering.
And honestly, I mean, Jay's kind of ambivalent like me. We weren't anticipating purchasing it this year. We know we can go another year with the plow truck we have because we spent, a fair bit of change repairing it last year. I'm just throwing that out there and saying we will be coming back next year for the purchase of the vehicle. And, it's gonna be at least $266,000. And right now we can have it for, if we bought it today, we could have it for about 20,000 less.
Seems like a big ask, Eric. It's huge. It's huge hitting it. I mean, I'm gonna defer to everybody that's there and knows a lot more. Just seems like a big ask and to ask the town after the way our budget season gets, and then to have this happen.
I'm not disagreeing with you, and I'm right.
I think it's great. Anytime you could save money, just like if I knew I was gonna buy a house this year versus next year, we could reason that with anything.
Sure.
I like the way that the town, and I try to get really interested in equipment and trucks and all of that kind of stuff. I know my husband's an expert in all that kind of stuff, but I do try to listen when you all talk and, listen about every little piece. It just seems then at what price will we say no? I mean, now we're talking 250,000 to spend, whereas before we're like, okay, let's make a little waiver for this or something, I'm like, forget it. Maybe it's because it's so late and I'm exhausted and starving. So,
Yeah.
but it's my truth. It just seems like a really big ask.
No,
So you had something you wanted to bring up. Like,
right.
so,
Yeah, and we wouldn't be wavering anything for this.
no, I get that.
Just to be clear, I think this would require, a special appropriation. We have to go to town meeting.
Yeah,
So just procedurally, this is a real bear.
yeah.
Okay?
No question.
So, I mean, this is the reason, one of the reasons I think we let this ride, we push it, we didn't expect to buy this truck this year. Getting
Right.
it through this year basically requires us to go back in the budget, have a town meeting, do a vote, all that. We just got the budget passed.
Right.
I mean, I'm anti trying to push it up. I think we say thanks, but no thanks, and we deal with this as we originally intended.
I share the same thoughts as Rob, and basically your numbers are right on the money, because I deal with not only Freightliner trucks, but I deal with international Peterbilt, Kenworth, and other trucks on my end of what I do, and they're all going up. The commodity surcharges and things like that are all costing anywhere from 20,000 and up. Not even some of them based on the type of truck. It's like buying monthly. It's going up that much. Again, man, we don't have town. We'd have to have town approval. We'd have to, to okay the funding, which we don't have in place. And I feel the same way. This should just be moved on to and stay on a regular schedule for everything, and then let the townspeople speak.
Another thing for us to keep in mind, and, we'll see how it unfolds this year, but, we have all this finance department stuff that we have to get straightened out. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
I'm volunteering my time and I'm going to go in and help and learn and try to keep everybody paid and get the bills paid. But, we have no idea what it's going to cost us to hire some of the people that we have. We budgeted things, but we don't know if we're going to have to go over because of the market, or we don't know if we're going to have to incur some professional services fees because we may need to hire a professional consultant to help us set up admins or something. There's so many unknowns right now that we have to fix our operational issues. And so, we have a lot of unknowns I think in this year to deal with.
Sure.
But we don't know what's going to happen yet. Hopefully everything will work out and things won't be as expensive as we think, but you never know.
Sure. Yep.
Any other comments?
Mark, do you have any? You're still chairman until next month, so.
I'll have a lot more to say once I'm not chairman. Chairman, you're supposed to thread that needle and be somewhat neutral. So, nah, not really. No, not me. Yeah, I got really nothing more. I do tend to agree with you guys though that it's a big ask, and perk up when I hear savings, and I know the supply chain thing is not going away anytime soon. So,
No,
if it were my business, I would say, I'd take a hard look at it. In this situation, politically, in terms of the budget and everything, as everyone's pointed out, I think it probably is best to let sleeping dogs lie there and just let it roll.
for the record, I agree with that. I just felt that I should at least pass on the option to the boards.
Okay. Anything else to be brought before the board as part of the board open discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to public speak. I don't see any members of the public here that aren't already on the board or participating. Okay, with that, I think we move on to our next agenda item, which is adjournment. Anybody want to make a motion for adjournment?
I make the motion to
I see
adjourn.
Diane yawning and making a motion to adjourn at the same time. Anyone
Oh,
want a second?
Second.
Kurt seconds, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Diane, for congratulations on getting to be chairman for at least a year. And you got any questions, by all means, just give me a holler. But
Okay.
sounds good. Everybody have a good month. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye, everybody.